Next to the Arcanist in update 38 with the Necrom chapter and the new kill feed in chat, there's only one other major addition to the Elder Scrolls Online that can affect PvP: class sets. With update 40, these 7 new sets, one for each class, are supposed to be unique and exciting rewards that come from completing content in the new Endless Archive arena. But are they actually worth looking out for? How do these new sets compare in terms of performance to the current best sets for PvP? If you really want to use these sets regardless of their performance for the fancy visuals, what's the best way to do this? Those questions are what I'll be going over in this class set tier list. PvP balance is in quite a stale state at the moment, with many classes running the same playstyles accompanied by the same sets. Especially proc sets like Master Dual Wield and strong defensive sets like Rallying Cry and Red Vitality are items you see over and over in PvP builds, including those of my website. This creates a strong meta that is hard to find new and original builds in. It also strongly decreases class identity. Class sets can be an obvious band-aid to fix these problems, though even if they do work, it does nothing about the underlying problems. Those problems are a subject for another video though. So let's go over the class sets themselves and see how they perform. Feel free to skip the next 2 minutes, because I'm starting off with one of the most useless sets I've seen for PvP in general. The Sorcerer set Monolith of Storms. This set is a basic proc set that creates 3 pillars with lightning flashing in between them. Enemies standing in the lightning take a small amount of damage every 2 seconds. The proc requirements of this set are weird already, with the pillar spawning on every initial and 5th tick of lightning damage. That means that it is mostly intended to be used with skills like Hurricane and Lightning Flood, giving some extra dot on top of that. It's also clearly aimed at PvE. In PvP you will only proc it with Streak and the occasional Endless Fury for those few people still running that. Boundless Storm or Hurricane are much less likely to hit somebody on specifically the 1st and 5th tick. It's also a stationary, low damage proc set, like a terrible version of Aegis Scholar or Pillar of None. In PvP you can simply take a step aside to avoid it. Not that this is needed anyway, because the damage is so low it barely tickles. But wait, there's more. It turns out that the pillars deal no damage around themselves either. It's literally only along the line of shock beams. And on top of that, if you're in tough luck, it's also possible to stack the pillars right on top of each other, creating a single square meter of effect. All of this means that the set not only has low damage, but as an enemy I think you'd have to do an effort to even get hit by it. And consider that even in PvE, the targeted audience here, nobody thinks this set is worth it. Absolute F tier set, you'd be better off running Trinemax Valor. The Templar set also holds a bad spot in this list. Similarly to the previous set, it seems like its targeted audience is PvE enjoyers rather than PvP. And just like the Sorc set, there's nobody actually finding this one worth it either, be it for PvE or PvP. The set does have quite a few mechanics with sustain, damage, and the idea of automatically casting a skill after some stacks is peculiar. Depending on how many stacks you have, the set gives from 12 to 480 unbuffed magicka regeneration. But there's also the loss of half of your current magicka after the maximum amount of stacks expires, which can be quite a gamble. Speaking of gambling, this also goes for the Wrathful Nova proc, which is the same as a Nova Templar ultimate. It takes a long time to get enough stacks for it, because most of the skills here are not optimal for PvP. Even if you do slot both Vampire's Bane and Solar Barrage and combine that with some Radiant Oppression casts, and you constantly spam all this, it takes 20 seconds before the proc happens. In normal PvP fights, where this cannot happen, we're looking at almost a minute of building stacks. And then when the proc does happen, there's no control over which target will receive the hit of the ultimate proc. On top of that, most PvP encounters do not even last a minute, making the only possible situation where the set is procced in duels or small-scale fights between experienced players. And they definitely know many better proc sets to make use of. Lastly, there's a short damage increase at max stacks, which for PvP basically means a short, difficult to predict window where Purifying Light and Radiant Oppression deal only 25% more damage. Combined, that sure is a heap of mechanics that altogether still aren't worth even considering this set for. The Warden set, Gardener of Seasons, is next on the list, because it's not something I can see being ran that much either. It's not completely useless, because it does in fact give some buff to your healing and survivability in general, through 2 different states of the set. The first gives minor heroism, which is nice, definitely in combination with major heroism from Simmering Shield. We'll have to see in actual PvP whether the uptime on this is good though. The proc requirement for the second state, Harbinger of Fall, is easy, since block casting heals is frequently needed. Minor vitality is also not bad, the Wardens have more than enough survivability as is. The same goes for the major main part, which basically means that melee attackers will deal a little less than 10% reduced damage. The thing is that it's just one of those new sets that is dead on arrival, because it is already outperformed by an existing set. In this case that's Skin Marcher's Cruelty, which gives the same buff with less uptime, but also a lot of other valuable buffs for solo or small scale play. Perhaps some ball groups could find use in this if they value these buffs and don't have some uptime on them already? It's kind of a shame because more effort was poured into visuals for this one, with not only the glow but also the roots, falling leaves and blossoms. The Arcanist is next in the middle of the list, because I think theoretically it provides some pretty nice buffs, but it depends on whether the uptime of these buffs will be good in practice. It would best fit on the back bar, where you can proc these survivability buffs with your heals. Especially builds that don't use up their crux constantly could benefit from this set. But I think that even if you rely on Fate Carver or other crux abilities a lot, you'll have the crux again in no time to make your heals apply major protection or minor heroism again. Arcanists using this set are also basically forced to use Rune Mend if they want to benefit from this set, since it's the only skill from this line that they use frequently. I'd call it a drawback as well, because health scaling heals like Impervious Rune Ward and Rune Guard of Freedom are not only cheaper but also stronger in combination with a high health build. That means that one way or another, swapping one of these heals to Rune Mend is a loss in sustain or burst heal size. So the usability of this set depends on whether you think if the buffs it gives and their uptime make up for the survivability loss for swapping out the skill and another defensive set. Nightblade received an alright set with Soul Cleaver, but it is one of the few sets that actually buff the skills themselves. It is not the skill line Nightblades get most of their damage from, so the set is more of a boon for niche playstyles like those that use Swallow Soul as a spam build. I'd say that's for the better too, since Nightblade is already a really powerful class that has no need at all for any buffs to the main builds it uses. I'm not sure on what range build exactly this set would shine, that's for someone of the likes of Heresia to figure out, but I imagine it would look something like this. Another strong application of this set is in classic Bombblade, with Soul Tether and Sap Essence or Power Extraction receiving a pretty big buff while using Soul Cleaver. The way this set promotes these non-mainstream playstyles is something I really like, and I don't know if this was intended, but either way it hit the mark for making a good and interesting class set idea. Summed up, I call this a B tier set for usability and an S tier set in design. The Necromancer set, Nobility and Decay, is the second to best option on this list. It provides a new mechanic with treating yourself as a corpse to enhance your abilities and gives healing and damage reduction similar to the popular Pariah set. The first part, called Beautiful Corpse, is pretty interesting but is not super useful. Most often there's plenty of corpses to draw from already, due to Blast Bones, Living Guardian and Summoner's Armor. The main benefit I can think of is using the Beautiful Corpse specifically for Living Tether, since this way you'll never break the tether when you need to go out of line of sight of the corpse. Usually this LOS breaking doesn't bother me too much, since it's a free skill, but hey, it makes a HOT more reliable in the end. The second part, giving 12% extra unnamed healing and reduced damage taken based on current health, is generally useful for PvP builds. That also makes this set best fit as a double bar 5-piece set. This shouldn't be a problem for Necromancer anyway, since the only way to make this set work is with proc sets like Master Dual Wield, which leaves room for a double barred 5-piece set. Which brings me to my main gripe with this set, the focus on survivability rather than damage. Necromancer is currently one of the worst classes in PvP, but in my opinion this issue is not caused by its survivability. In fact, it has pretty good passive defense and a decently easy time sustaining, resulting in a mediocre amount of survivability. It's the damage that is truly lacking here. Necromancer has no proper spammable, no proper crowd control, and next to Blast Bones almost all their damage is sourced from non-class skills like Dawnbreaker and proc sets. So in order to make the class set actually useful and engaging, it would have been better if it gave some damage or CC buff, which could help alleviate the issues this class faces. Look at the synergy one could make between a class set and Ghostly Embrace for example. Anyway, it looks like it is simply a more fun alternative to Pariah, so worth a spot in A tier. And lastly there's the Dragonknight set, definitely the best set to come out of this whole class set debate. Not that the class needed a buff anyway, but now Dragonknight players can enjoy a major heroism buff on the front bar, 14% extra healing on the back bar, or both if they feel like it. It's a good set, intended for PvP, and there the devs hit the mark of giving the class an extra option to play with. Did anybody ask for this on Dragonknight though? It's also a very flexible set, which can be either one-barred or double-barred. One of the best ways to use the set in my opinion is instead of Daedric Trickery on the front bar, since it gives the same major heroism buff but without the RNG attached to it. Major heroism is a super useful bonus to have on Dragonknight, just like any other ult game bonus such as Bloodspawn and minor heroism potions. 14% extra healing is good for any class as well, and since most heals are on the back bar anyway, double barring this set for both the major heroism on the front bar and the healing boost is another good idea. That fits in disgustingly well on a proc set build with Master Deal with front bar, Rallying Cry or Vertaschen Icedraft back bar, and whatever monster set you prefer. To summarize what Basal Blooded Warrior does, it will buff the two existing playstyles of an overpowered class, but it won't bring anything new to the table. As a conclusion, I want to share my thoughts on the irony of these new class sets. As mentioned at the start of this video, class identity is a severe issue that ESO has to deal with at the moment, both for PvE and PvP. In my opinion, adding new sets is nothing but applying duct tape rather than fixing the actual problems that cause this, but they could at least help to temporarily give more identity, more originality in the way you can theory craft and play different builds. So in that sense, this is a pretty good idea. Alas, most of these sets are rather mediocre or do not create strong new playstyles or mechanics. Also, shout out to the poop armor visual that the Dragonknight set gives. It really goes hand in hand with the poop rock skill for the ultimate shitter build. Thank you for watching.
All of my monsters.